This is from episode 1 of The Other Black Girl on Hulu. First, we start the episode with a 1988 flashback scene from the inside of the office space of Wagner Books. All of a sudden, we see a young woman enter the office space, shoving something into her bag, and then running towards the elevator and then frantically scratching her scalp. The next scene, we see her enter the metro while still being in this panic state. This scene seems very eerie, and she starts looking around at others on the train in a creepy way, and then all of a sudden, the lights start flickering on and off in the metro. While frantically scratching her head, she looks over and sees everyone that has been sitting in their seats, sitting closer to her and staring at her, which startles her, and she clams up and closes her eyes from them appearing so close to her. She looks up again and sees everyone on the metro just sitting and minding their business, as they were before she entered the metro. After that, she begins panicking again, and she looks down at her hands. Looking up once again, she sees the metro full of people standing less than a foot from her, right directly in front of her, which sends her into a full panic, where she screams in utter terror, which ends the flashback. Next, we're shown the character Neela Rogers in the Metro present day. We see her writing her commentary for a novel called Needles and Pens by an author known as Colin Franklin, where she seems to be displeased with the particular character in the novel named Chartricia. We cut to a scene where Neela is in the elevator listening to her music, which is loud enough to be heard, which weirdly prompts the older Caucasian lady standing in front of her to stare at her as if she's never heard rap music before. After that weird interaction, Neela takes out her headphones and goes back to look at the wall of editors that are all over a specific wall in her office space. Throughout the whole wall, one picture of a black woman who was an editor in 1988 catches her attention. We then see Neela in her boss Vera's office organizing and cleaning her desk before she comes in. For a second, she sits down in her boss's chair and behaves as if she's imagining what it would be like to have the office to herself one day. Right as she's gazing out the window, sitting in her boss's chair, she's startled by her boss, Vera. She jumps up and greets her with the novel manuscript. They discuss a variety of things concerning the problematic novel that we saw Neela looking at on the train. After updating Vera on all the things having to do with this novel, she thanks her saying, "As always, Neela, you're the best." After thanking her, she tells her she wants to talk to her about the author's novel, which she was seeing earlier, writing the words problematic on the manuscript as a part of her critique. As soon as she clarifies that it's the novel with the problematic character, Chartricia, Neela's smile drops. Her boss informs her that she wants the book in copywriting ASAP, and she wants her thoughts. Then Neela rushes out of Vera's office. We cut to a scene of her at her desk where we hear her coworker on the phone speaking to her boss, Maisie. Her coworker hangs up, looks over at Neela, and says Maisie is trying to squeeze every last drop out of her. Neela knows that this is the last week her coworker is going to be working there and begs her not to leave. She tries to make her see the good in working there and that she could potentially serve as a good example, but she's clearly tired of working there. All of a sudden, Vera pokes her head out the office door and tells Neela to hand out invitations to the author Colin's announcement party. You know, the one that we saw that was problematic, had the problematic character. So yeah. We cut to her walking around, placing invitations on people's desks, and then we see a Caucasian lady by the name of Sophie sneak up behind her, asking if she received an email she sent about an article titled, "The Token in the Machine, Being Black in a White Workplace." Sophie then asks Neela if she read the article that she just sent her, and Neela asks, "In the last 30 seconds?" Sophie starts saying how she thinks it's an important topic, and she wants to be a better ally, and she gets excited and says, "That piece got me so fired up." Neela looks at her in utter disbelief. We cut to her sitting at her desk on the computer. She's sitting there, the lights start to flicker above her head, and then all of a sudden her computer screen shuts off. She reaches to turn it on, and then she sees a video camera footage pop onto her computer screen. Neela looks around, freaked out. She looks back at the computer and then sees a reflection that doesn't look like her. And then she slowly tries to reach towards the reflection. But as she reaches, the reflection lets out a startling scream, which makes Neela jump back in fear. Her coworker notices her jumping back and asks if she's okay. After her coworker gets her attention, she looks back at the screen and all of a sudden it's normal again. We cut to a scene where Neela enters her work building and is being watched by a woman in a black hat. All of a sudden, Neela senses something isn't right and slowly turns to see who is watching her. But when she turns around, the woman is gone. We see the unidentified woman brush past the security guard and steals what looks to be the guard's ID card to get in and out of the building. Then we see Neela at her desk where she puts down her purse, and then we hear Maisie, the other top editor, aside from her boss, call Neela to her office to meet someone. Maisie then introduces Neela to Hazel May McCall, which will now be Maisie's new assistant. Neela greets Hazel excitedly because there's not much diversity in the office currently. So Maisie is the other editor-in-chief I believe in this office space. Maisie then tells Hazel that Neela is Vera's assistant, which she refers to Vera as iconic. Maisie mentions to Neela that Hazel mentors underprivileged students in Harlem. Nella and Hazel bond over their shared experiences going to historically black colleges and attending memorable homecomings, aka HBCUs. As they bond over their experiences, Hazel and Neela both start laughing and slowly stop as their boss hysterically starts laughing out of nowhere, trying to break into their conversation. After Maisie interrupts their conversation, she then tried to give Hazel a nickname, saying, "Oh, is that a fun nickname for us? Hayes and Maze." Hazel tells Maisie and Neela she's got to get back to her tutoring position. And she turns to leave and tells Neela it's nice to meet her. Maisie then runs behind Hazel to walk her out. We cut to a scene where Neela tells her friend Malika that her old coworker buddy is black. Neela tells Malika it's about time they started hiring more black people in her office. Her friend asks for all the details of her new coworker Hazel. After discussing how much Neela thinks that Malika would even like her, Neela's boyfriend Owen walks up and kisses Neela on the cheek and apologizes for being late. Neela's boyfriend tells them he's only late because he had to stay and clean a mural that was defaced. Owen then asked, "What's the deal with the new girl?" Neela and Malika both said in unison, "Black," where he thinks it's a great idea to ask Neela if they should have her over. And Neela agrees. Her friend hops up and then goes to get more drinks, and then Owen suddenly gets a text saying that the murals were defaced again. To which he kisses Neela on the cheek and goes to clean the murals. Malika returns with shots and they toast. We cut to a scene where Neela is walking through the office sipping her coffee and she hears Vera, her boss, calling her into the office where Vera praises her for her work, where she says, "Your edits are brilliant." She tells her she wants to recommend her for a promotion to the owner of Wagner Books, Richard. Before she could even leave, she then asked Neela for her thoughts on the book with the problematic character. Neela is apprehensive, saying, "Oh, right now," as in like, "I really don't want to talk about this right now. This is not, good news on the back end of me hearing that I'm gonna get a promotion." Vera tells her right now, and she tells her, as always, don't hold back. Neela tells her boss Vera that only black character in this book is problematic. She mentions that the only black character in the book hits on every harmful stereotype. Vera looks shocked at Neela's criticism of the novel. After Neela tells Vera the truth about how she feels about the novel, Vera says, "I'm glad you brought this to me first." Despite hearing the honest criticism Neela gave, she advises Neela to lie to the author Colin. Neela is in disbelief as Vera tells her, "I hear you and I'm listening, but Colin keeps the lights on at Wagner." She instructs her to compliment and earn his trust before giving any honest feedback on the book. She tells her she believes in her and wants her to excel, but she has to be diplomatic to grow within the company. She reluctantly agrees and then gets up to leave and then tells Neela to keep their conversation private. We cut to a scene where Neela is in the bathroom and Hazel enters, and Neela turns to Hazel and says, "Is it weird for me to say that it's really nice that you're here?" Hazel then says she gets it. Neela offers to have a chat with her about anything she wants to know. We cut to a scene with Hazel and Neela gossiping outside about people in their office, as Neela points out a coworker from afar and says he doesn't realize that we can hear him farting in his office. Hazel laughs and says it's still better than her old job in Boston, which we'll find out later why. She also tells her she barely lasted a year at her old job, which is kind of weird. That's always a red flag to me. Before going back into the building, she starts going through her bag. She lays this book on the table called Burning Heart. As soon as Neela sees it, she says it's her favorite book, and Hazel says it's hers too. She shows her that she got a signed copy. Neela starts telling Hazel that because of the author Kendra Ray Phillips, she was led to work for Wagner because Kendra Ray was once an editor there. Hazel says, I can't imagine having that much success as a Black woman back then. She says she thinks that things are maybe getting better, where Hazel says, are they? Neela then says, but you're here, so now there's two of us. That must mean something is going in the right direction. As they're talking, Hazel tells Neela that she took a selfie with Kendra Ray's photo on the wall after her interview. At first, she thinks that Neela will think it's weird, but then Neela reveals that she also took a selfie with the Black editor's photo too, and they both laugh together about it. Next, we cut to a scene where Richard, the owner of Wagner Books, walks up to Hazel to introduce himself, and he makes a joke about not being too formal about his name and says hello to Neela while still in conversation with Hazel. Hazel tells Richard that Neela has been so supportive towards her. After Richard walks off, Hazel tells Neela that Richard was surprisingly cool. Neela turns around and sees a reminder in her email about the party that they're throwing for the author Colin. She makes a frustrated noise and Hazel notices. She tells her that his book has a problematic character and she needs to decide if she's going to tell him the truth about what she thinks about the book or lie and say she likes it. Hazel tells Neela that if Colin's book rubs you the wrong way, trust it. You're probably not the only one who feels that way. Hazel tries to encourage her to tell the author the truth about his book. But Neela says that she's not sure if she wants to because she just doesn't want to lose out on getting her promotion. Hazel tells Neela that she'll support her if she tells the author the truth about the problematic character in his book. Next, we cut to a scene of the author of the problematic book walking into the office and screaming to get the attention of everyone in the office by saying, relax, this is not a drill, Daddy's home. Vera then walks up to Colin and greets him, where they go into her office and they talk, loudly of course. We then cut to a scene of the author Colin's announcement party where Richard gives a toast to what hopefully is a #1 bestseller. Next scene, we see Neela in a conversation with her coworker, Sophie, where it looks like she's not really listening to the conversation, and then she walks off from the coworker to go and join the conversation with the author, Vera, and Hazel. Sophie, remember, is the coworker that gave her that weird article about being a token in the workplace. So yeah, keep that in mind. The author turns to ask Hazel what she thinks of his newest novel, and she says that Neela and her were talking, and Neela had some thoughts. Hazel looks like a deer in caught in headlights and says it's rich and tragic in a good way, and then follows with a but, like a big but, where her boss, Vera, encourages her not to continue. She's kind of like trying to guide her away from like continuing with the sentence and just like leaving it with the rich and tragic in a good way type of situation, but she's like, no, I gotta get this out. After she said the lighthearted critique of this book, she then let her real feelings show, despite what her boss Vera said not to do. She then said, I'm sorry, I just have to say that Chartricia is problematic. She hits a lot of harmful stereotypes for Black people. Neela looks at Hazel for support, but Hazel freezes up and says nothing supportive. After he clarifies that Neela believes his work is harmful, the author Colin turns to Hazel and says, what did you think? Where she lies and says that she really liked the book, although she knows that her and Neela really hated the book. But she's just gonna save face. The author thanks Hazel for the good review and says his books aren't for everyone, and slightly feels like agitated towards Neela's review because he's looking directly at her when he says these books aren't for everyone. The author walks out basically saying, according to the numbers, he writes great books, basically discounting what Neela said about the book. He then turns around and leaves. Right after Colin, the author, left, Vera expresses her unsatisfaction with Neela's critique, and she turns to Neela and tells her that she wants to see her in her office first thing in the morning. We cut to a scene of Neela leaving the office late at night. She's walking towards the door and reaching for her keys in her pocket. And when she reaches in, she notices a note that says, leave Wagner now. She looks around and gets startled by the flickering lights and electricity buzzing around her. She then ran into the elevator where she thought there was like a sense of peace for 1 second. But then the lights start flickering again in the elevator, and all of a sudden, she sees the reflection of the Black editor that she saw on the wall in her office space in the elevator door. She and the ghost of the editor tries to reach toward each other, and a scary spark startles Neela, and she jumps back in the elevator. And that's the end of the first episode. Follow me for more. I'm going to be doing another episode probably next week. Like, comment, and subscribe. Bye.